welcome. So this is the meeting to talk about all things agriculture and the Fielden charrette. And I'm Brian Wright. I'm the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative, leading the consultant team of planners and engineers and artists and big idea people and technical people, trying to think through what this can become. How many people were here at the opening presentation last night? A couple. So for those who weren't, I basically explained that we haven't done anything yet. So if you're here for answers, you have to wait until come up with a plan. But we will be. So we set up our office here. That's all the noises behind us. It's my team. You're up there too working. And so we haven't even still made the first mark on the paper, but we're about to. So we've been talking about that we want this to be an agri-hood. We have about 300 acres that we're working on planning right now. The idea is for there to be productive, meaningful agriculture, as part of this project, hopefully woven throughout the project. And we will be picking your brain in this session. That's kind of an open format, and you guys ask questions too. But in our experience, having worked on other agri-hoods, one of the most challenging things is, so how's agriculture going to work this thing? And it's not challenging necessarily to figure out, well, it's not now that we've done it in another project, but the hard part is finding people to sort of undertake it and execute it. And the thing that's nice is most places have a robust agriculture community, and there are people who are experts in various things that want to be involved. And there's people who want to actually be an operator, and so we're talking to those kind of people as well. But part of it is, having a plan, the intent to do this up front. That's where we're at today. So if we could just go around and do some introductions, say who you are, and if you represent a group or anything like that.
I'll do some of the medical.
Colton Henley, I don't think that's
Jack Maruna. I'm a liaison at the university between hospitality, culinary sciences, and college of agriculture. And then I also own a consulting firm where I work with resorts, restaurants, hotels, hospitals, and assisting them in growing their on-site production process.
I'm Kelly Russell, not here representing a group per se, but a rural sociologist in a rural community,
Lots of things I want to talk to you about later in this rural sociology. That's fascinating to me. Go ahead.
David Russell, I'm an extension specialist with the College of Ag and for environmental science. So I specialize in vegetation management, land management. Also got a background in landscape architecture.
I'm Nicole Finger. I'm a landowner on 88. I'm a landowner on 88. Coco and Jojo Van Horn, and we are also landowners, and we have worked on a large scale pasture-based livestock farm
Any of these?
in upstate New York.
John Wood, landowner.
James, Jackson and Paul GMC, Auburn, had an ag degree.
Awesome. In the back there. Who do you have there with? There. Oh, wow. Lucky her. Oh, wow. How about that? That's what I think. In the water. Right. And then we got some of my design team there, and in the very back. Sounds like a TV show in the making. All right. So how is the ag community around here? Is there a robust, like, does everybody know everybody? The first time some of y'all have met each other? What does that word mean to y'all, the ag community? I realize it's kind of a confusing title because we're making a community with ag, and so you may have thought we meant ag community, agrihood, but I meant the ag community at large here. We,
Also, we wanted that community with the contract.
yeah,
All university, agriculture related all through this side of town too. I think there's organizations now kind of hey, people in the field of agriculture, like Alpha's big involved, like Lee County Farmers Federation. As a group of farmers and stuff that are certain age, you have the Alabama Farmers Federation, which is over the age of 35. So there's organizations that kind of connect here. But I think university is probably a big tie for a lot of the agriculture kind of stems from the university around here.
yeah. I was thinking about it. I actually went to Auburn, and so we did another agrihood project in Florida, and there it's a 3,000 acre one. It's really big. And so we were like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if all of the colleges and universities in the state had a satellite situation here? Because when you're doing development, I think we've got on that side it was primarily silviculture, pine plantation. And so there's sort of forest management stuff going on there. There's all the agriculture we're doing. There's building science and architecture, and then all of these things. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if this project was a place where you could actually have the university involved doing things, students coming out and all of that. So that's that. See you smiling at that. Why?
Large, slow moving piece.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a blessing.
yeah,
But you get any sort of research or involved, you
yeah. No, that's good advice.
get,
Thank you.
it is hard. It's amazing. But you just have to
Right. Yeah, I was thinking more so like rural studio, like students go down and they do, they work on this, work on that, and it's kind of like, at the pace of the thing rather than like, probably not going to be like a serious research project that required this or that, but it's more like an opportunity for students to get involved or just to tap into expertise of, professors and whoever else, I don't know how much interaction the university has with those kind of things, but it seemed like a cool opportunity. And for a project like this that wants to really kind of be a showcase for how to do responsible rural growth and development, like pretty neat to kind of teach young people and to tap into that resource is my thought. But I hadn't thought of the red
I'd
tape.
say it's a it depends statement. It's
Okay.
not a blanket statement by any means.
Yeah.
As a researcher with the university, we can make things happen.
Okay. Yeah, we have to seize the opportunity. You're like, this is too good to pass up. We're going to figure out how to just make it pink tape instead of red tape. And here we go. All right. Good. Is there a farmer's market around? You don't have a farmer's market? Yeah. Where is that? Where is it happening? Opelika.
every day. See, see,
They called Parkway. Okay. Yeah. Apartments. And sometimes we'll see there, communities will have an amazing farmer's market, but it's located in like the Walmart parking lot or something. And you're like, that's not ideal. And so you're like, wouldn't it be cool if you had the farmer's market, but it had a better home, And so,
it's really small. I mean, there's probably 8 vendors there at any given Saturday. It's easy.
A lot of farmers markets. That's like but quite distributed.
Yeah, a lot of the people there are going.
Okay. Okay.
The disparity between size, ag, kind of all over the state is pretty large. A few really small scale growers, not saying medium, a handful of small scale growers, and then there's most large traditional row crop, peanut, corn, soy, and then we of course have poultry as another major commodity here.
Is there anywhere like a rural retreat where somebody can go like for agritourism, you can go like stay on a farm and experience farm to table and get your hands dirty and pay money to get your hands dirty.
Phil Barnes, well, has one of the
Yeah.
course show.
Yep.
They do events there. They have staycation.
That'd be neat knowing that Auburn has a robust hospitality program that, kind of, there's the hotel in town there, what campus, whatever, but then like, it'd be kind of neat to have a rural retreat version of this agritourism and ecotourism is growing so much. Maybe that was cool. That sound, especially for the neighbors, does that sound like a good thing? Not a good thing?
Execution, just like a lot of things we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. Assuming it's executed well. It's lovely. Okay. I know.
I'm always saying, why don't you pop up little places? Get away from instead of being, game day, weekends, being in town, this is just like, it's a breath of fresh air when you walk outside and you see. Priority, best birthday, that might be, but yes, their desire is somewhere to stay, it feels farm table and resources.
So would piggyback on that. So the place we worked in upstate New York had like an old converted barn that they used for what they call the farm stay. You could book it through, VRBO or whatever. And in that situation, it was exactly that. You could drive up from the city, stay out there, no climate control in there. So
Oh, wow.
it's
Real farm.
yeah, and it was awesome.
What's it called?
It's on a working farm, Kinderhook Farm. So the difference there, it was like the emphasis was, I would say, on the farm, one unit, things of that nature. With what we've heard about early ideas from folks involved with this and the type of units that they were talking about building, it seemed like a game day kind of rental situation, essentially an opportunity for this, which I would say as a neighbor is like a very high concern. Like if all of a sudden folks start coming just to get out and get some fresh air, but it's it's a cheap place to cram as many people as you can in there on a weekend,
Right.
And
What if it's
and without regulations, I believe like
Right.
the city is putting regulations in for short-term rentals.
Yeah. What if it's an expensive place to sort of come and it's, I just don't know, I don't have a sense of not living in a college town and all that stuff. Like, I mean, we had concern about short-term rentals in Franklin. People come there and this is just a nice place to visit, but they're not coming to like relive their glory days, and so is it just short-term rental in general, or just like when people are getting rowdy, short-term rental?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a whole, short-term rentals is a recent trend, like called the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And my understanding is a lot of municipalities or whatever are kind of playing catch up, try to like fix what already went wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I think it would be something to be high on the priority list of like, what would the vision be
Yeah.
for that in this? And again, what could be ensured on the front end
Mhm.
for the best possible outcomes for residents and neighbors.
And it would be a shame to put in all this beautiful effort to do all these regenerative, sustainable practices and hope that people share in your vision. We definitely do. But because there's so few hotels, even the new hotel, you have to buy the season pass to football games in order to have a room there. It's not easy to find places to stay, nice places to stay.
Yeah.
So it'd be a shame if it was just open, if it was, whether it's expensive or inexpensive or somewhere in the middle of the road, it'd be sad to see those units, those homes, whatever they are, utilized. And for people coming just to come down for a game or,
Mhm.
something short, and they're not really coming because for the agritourism itself.
Yes.
Right.
So I think that's a concern we have is how would we put in any kind of protections against it being oversaturated with people who just want to come down primarily for games and sports or taking their kids to various college events.
Like maybe not available to rent on game day weekends, actually. Potentially could be an idea to extend that. So there's a real focus on the agritourism, not just to stay,
Mhm. Yeah.
have a negative impact on it.
Are there types of units that tend to be, because like when I was talking about it, the sort of agritourism experience, like when I've gone, we did a whole tour of these, sort of in Europe of these, inland agritourism, and you're like staying in what was the old barn that's been converted into these units, or whatever, and I don't know if they lend themselves to, sort of game day debauchery, but some units do more so, like a bigger house I see people rent and it's like our new fraternity house, even though we're in now. And so, or, would the type of facilities,
I could see it going either way. I could see the small 2-bedroom cottage being crammed with younger folks looking for cheaper accommodations.
Yeah.
I could see the larger house being. So I think it could kind of go either way. I think one of the thoughts that crossed my mind, you kind of mentioned the European model. We experienced our place in New York, and even what Melissa mentioned with, like if she built a place, I think there's situations where there's agritourism and that has a host. There's
Yeah.
a family. You came to our farm and wherever you were in Europe, you're coming to our property and you're renting our back house or whatever it is, and you have a host, things of that nature. It's different, I think, when there's just like, a dozen rental cottages. And it's kind of like, hey, check in on the keypad and free for all, and
Mhm.
here's the list of rules and regulations, but probably no one's really going to enforce them because, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sort of grown-up supervision required. Okay. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that till right now. Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, it can't be the community because people's interest ebbs and flows and they're busy and all of a sudden the person who is the, spearhead of it all has their eighth kid and it's like, oh shoot, now I really, now I don't have time. And so the way that we're doing it in my agrihood is we actually have farm consultant that we're working right now is helping us, figure out the business plan for the farm, the layout, all of that stuff so that it is self-sufficient, functioning entity on its own. And then the idea is that person, in our case, will then come on as a full-time like staff person, paid position, and one of the things we're actually doing is we're gonna have to, even though we have the historic farm buildings and the cool tobacco barn and silos and stuff, but we know we're gonna probably need to build in some new barns. So in one of those buildings, we're actually gonna put farmhand housing in it. So I'll actually have our farmhands able to live in this development in Franklin, Tennessee, which is super expensive and they wouldn't be able to otherwise. And so trying to think through some of those kind of things and like how it needs to be maintained, and then also to designing different aspects and elements of it in a way that because you're intertwined in the community, it's more important for it to look good, all the time, even when it's downtime in the winter and whatnot. And so that's important. But we've had interest in other organizations. Like there's a group called Cultivate, that does like sell a pound, give a pound, like Tom's Shoes. And so, they're trying to expand their operation and they're just desperate for available land. And they're like, we will farm and maintain as much of this as you'll make available to us. And so, and it can be a combination of those things too. In any case, we would want, in my development, we want a farm manager that's overseeing whatever. And then we're also are doing some like 5-acre incubator organic farms. So we did the downtown and waterfront master plan in Burlington, Vermont, and they have this place called the Intervale. And like 10% of the food in Burlington comes from less than a mile from their urban downtown. 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but for it to travel that short of a distance is remarkable. And so, and the way they do it is they have these incubator organic farms there. So people are looking to get into farming. They can do it at smaller scale, and then they can, once they learn their business and create their business, they can get a bigger piece of property somewhere else. And so it'd be, in our case, we have a combination. We only have 200 acres in my aggregate. So there's opportunities for all these kind of things. It just depends on how robust we want it to be.
For that farm consultant, the Nashville project, the Franklin project, is that person, did your consulting firm hire that person or did the developers hire
The developer.
that? And then once that person converts to the farm manager, who is that person?
Of the development company. So just in the same way that you might have a landscaping crew on staff or whatever. In this case, it's a higher level position at, but it's yeah.
The HOA fees pay for that.
So yeah, well, yes. I mean, ultimately, what we're doing in our case is we're going to have with your HOA dues, you get a CSA share, and it's like automatic, and so you have automatic income coming in that case. Then we also in our village center is much more robust than what we're talking about here. So we'll have like a percent of ag tax, if you will, or whatever, and then there's kind of a multi-tiered system that's kind of supporting it. But like I said, it has to function on its own. And so when in the business plan, we've said you can't count any of that stuff. That stuff is going to be just make it easier for you to do an even better job. You need to make sure it functions on its own. Then we can talk about it there. So it really, in that case, it's farm as if the farmer were starting their own farm and they were paying for all the stuff themselves, including their salary. But ultimately paying it guaranteed.
Yes, maybe this would fall in line with the HOA, but I think there's a lot of people that have come to these meetings that have the same values or similar that you do. Caring for the environment, caring for the pollinator, natural habitat, not disturbing the soil too much. And we definitely fall in that camp. And that excites us. What if you have residents? It sounds like there could be a lot of people. How do you control, how some, like their values, they don't align. They love like the romanticized vision of living in an agri-hood, but their values don't align with yours and your team's. And so, I'm hoping, or I'm questioning, like, will there be rules in place? Like, what if you have your pollinator garden over here, and then down the road, someone wants mosquito authority to come in and spray their backyard? Or you have kids that want to shoot fireworks on 4th of July, which is huge disturbance to the wildlife, not also very potent. And, things like that, like how would you propose having some type of control? Because, you can't imagine it's not a legal process to screen everyone and make sure that they are into regenerative agriculture. But what would be needed to be put in place to protect everything that's built and maintain it in a way that it's not contradictory to what is protects?
So it's sort of multiple layers of protection. So the first one is just kind of like the basic, like right now, if if you've ever lived in a neighborhood with an HOA and, you go and put a clothesline out in your yard, problem, get fined. You don't fix it, you ultimately then get a lien put on your property and you lose your house. So there's that sort of normal legal process that would be in place. The other thing is making it clear, because when you set out to do a development like this, you're obviously limiting your market, your buyer, right? Because not everybody is going to want to have this lifestyle, and you accept that, and not only do you accept it, you lean into it. And so, like for us, we're talking about doing an ad where it's like hand holding like some seedling or whatever, and there's like featuring the dirt under their fingernails, and we say, trying to figure out how to say it exactly so it doesn't sound elitist or snobby, but like Armistead's not for everyone. Armistead's not for everyone. If you don't like dirt under your nails, it's not for you, kind of a thing. And so, like doing that, and then the other thing is, agrihood or not, when you're creating one of these walkable neighborhoods like this, and I mentioned in the last meeting, like typically you'd have on-street parking, and that's part of the traffic calming strategy, and just moving cars away from the sidewalk. Street trees do the same, and like you have people who move in from a regular subdivision who don't have on-street parking, and like they may go like, okay, I know I have on-street parking in front of my house, but in their mind, like that's their spot, and like they, we'll put a little note under someone's windshield wiper and say, "You're parking my spot. Please don't do that again." And like, oh no, this is public parking. This is for anyone who wants, first come first serve. And so I've come to the point now, and that literally happened to me in my neighborhood. And I was, I'm planning and work on the development of not my development, I live in. And I was just like the irony of somebody putting that note on under my windshield wiper. And I was like, okay, if I ever do development, we're going to have homeowner training. And when you move in, first of all, you're covenants, I'm sure you're signing, when you're at the closing table, I agree to understand what this project is. And then you're going to participate. We have this like newcomer meeting. It's a social thing. I was like, that's the perfect time to do it. Come in and you say, here's why you like this neighborhood. You probably don't even realize you think it's cool or whatever, but here's what it is, right? And we'll have, we're going to have signage around it, explain pollinators and all that stuff. And, why you don't need to spray your, in this neighborhood, people don't spray there because they can hurt the pollen, So there's an educational process as well. So you've got education, you're selective about who is going to move in, you make it clear to them what they're buying into, why they like it, and then you have your normal legal that true protection. You have to go to a great extent to do these kind of things, but it's
It sound like that process, similar to the common theme we've talked about before, is not necessarily part of the design, process, and submittal process, but more like the burden that falls on the developer to follow through on that down the road, post design, post approval, and all that stuff.
It's just gotta go to the home.
the HOA would always run that. And so, and
Most developers don't live.
true, true. They don't. And also when we're doing a project like this in a county setting, most people don't have an HOA. In fact, they're like, that's why we live in the county. We don't want to have an HOA, or they've never lived in the neighborhood with an HOA. And so I say, oh, well, these protections will be in place with the HOA. And I don't understand what that means, but ultimately, back to my point too about infrastructure needs and sort of the community at large, the surrounding communities' interest being aligned with the developers, is that if you go to the trouble to create this great place, and goofing it up, then it's a loss for everyone, and people aren't interested in buying in subsequent phases.
Yeah, I think that's the connection to your resource of a land grant institution down the road. Is if your homeowner comes into this area and they trust the manager, a group of managers that's stewarding the land, you know, that manager or group of managers are in direct contact with the university that help them with their mission and their overarching goals. So I think that's the relationship there.
Well, and that's one of the things too. It's like there's a lot of firms that do planning and stuff. But, you know, the reason why the development team came to us is because this is what we do, right? And so, I mean, really, people are like, well, what have you been told? What's your instruction? How many units? I haven't tried right in our yard. But the one thing that we have been told is, tell us how to do this. Tell us how to make this place because we're into this stuff and we've not done this before. And we're counting on you to guide us through this process. You are, even though I'm not financially a part of the development team, part of the development. So it's kind of like, and it's also, you know, last night we had the board of all the different folks who are involved in this, a bunch of people. And honestly, it's one of the first times the first time ever that we've done a project where there are groups besides the landowner that are involved this early on, that are putting their name on it, that are staking their reputation on it, all that stuff. And so it's pretty neat to see. And the reason that they are is because they're all aligned with the vision. And so it's like unique. Kind of special. I'm excited to be part of it. Rural sociology. Tell me anything about that. It's interesting to everybody besides just you and me.
I'll just kind of, I guess, track a little bit on the idea that everyone needs to be aligned with the vision and buy in. Because I think there are many people that don't know, as you're talking about, they need that education process. They don't know, they see what they want, but they're not there yet. But living in a community like this help them get there by understanding the values, understanding the ethics. Many people are going to see the pastoral aspect of it and like that. And I would not recommend shutting those people out, even if they don't share the same ethics and vision, as long as they're willing to buy into it, if that makes sense. So I guess I push back a little bit. I don't think they can share it immediately. They just need to be in the process of buying into it. Whether that's someone who's buying it permanently or if there is short-term rentals, that too. Because I think if we're really talking about the mission and vision of an agri-hood, then I would see it as being welcoming even to the people who don't fully understand it. So you don't have to buy in, especially for a short-term rental. It's if you want to, if you have that interest. And then you mentioned kind of the aspects of privilege of being able to afford to do this, both for short-term and long-term. We recognize there are definitely aspects of that. I don't know at what point you'll kind of turn to the pastoral aspect, but I see that as a big draw for people. They may not know and use words representative to agriculture, but they will enjoy those pastoral aspects and those values. And as a young family, maybe want to buy into it. As an older couple, return to that. That's what I see.
Those are good points. And you know, the way that I took your comment and the way that I think about it too is like, hopefully there will be people who didn't even know they were missing this and it will be for them. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that one, they know enough to not mess it up, or two, they're prepared to, like, even if their preferences need to change, to be part of the community, they can't go mess up something. There is more of a protective thing, is the way that I think about it.
And I appreciate your insight, Kelly, and
maybe some of the things I was saying was making it sound like there should be an intense screening process. And if you don't know the word regenerative,
Right.
you're out.
Right.
That's not what I'm implying at all. There's been time in my life where I didn't know what any of this meant. And I grew a lot by working on a farm, working with farmers, animals, being outside. And I have a lot of respect for people that aren't there, but want to get there, or they're attracted to that. They don't know where to start. My concern, what you were touching on, is just if people just in their own desire want to pursue a practice that doesn't align with the value of the aggregate. My concern was what would be put in place to help steer them in the right direction so that it doesn't affect the habitat and the other neighbors who are educated and don't want to be frustrated. That's what I was.
Good point. And the other thing you said about when it comes to the short-term rentals and all, there's this thing that referred to as the seaside effect, right? So Seaside, Florida, familiar with it? It was the first new walkable mixed-use neighborhood that was done, in 100 years, right? And it became this resort, and it's like it's crazy now. So just don't walk away from this meeting thinking I'm suggesting that we're going to do that here, right? But this idea, and so a lot of people are like, that's just a resort, that doesn't really count, or whatever. And my old firm did the master plan for it, and my boss would say, like, here's the thing, you know how many thousands of people, I don't know now at this point, have come through Seaside and experienced that for a weekend, for a week, for a day, and all of a sudden have their eyes opened to the fact that I don't have to live in a regular subdivision. Like there are places like you can make a new place like the places I visit in the historic town on vacation, or something that's still postcard picturesque. And so like there's something to be said for that. And if somebody comes and stays, even if it's on a game day, but they experience that sort of the agri-hood and the farm to table, and they see that there's like, oh, there's this real community as part of this too, and part of this thing I'm staying at. The next thing you know, maybe they go home. And like when I bought our last house, I took out all of the landscaping and made it all edible, right? And so there were holly bushes as the foundation planting of our porch. There were no berry bushes. There ground cover of like ivy, and now it's strawberries. And I remember standing out there, and my daughter just went to college a couple of weeks ago, 5 or 6, standing out there, and we're harvesting blueberries and our house, our front porch is like 5 feet from the sidewalk, right? And her friend came out, and I was like, hey Riley, do you want to offer her a raspberry, because I had raspberry canes inside there on the stairs. And I said, want a raspberry? And she's like, oh no, I only eat raspberries from the grocery store. And it was just shocking, and but people would walk past my house, and all of a sudden you started seeing raised beds popping up in the neighborhood, and people doing the different things than they were before. And so they like experienced it, and that just sort of seeing what I was doing, and then they went and did it themselves. And so I mentioned last night the idea of educational components of this as well. So even the tourism component can be its own education, but I understand there's a lot of families and stuff around, and I would love for this to be like a hub, for that type of experiential learning as well. And I imagine that lots of small families want to live here, part of their daily life. So, what else?
Speaking about edible gardens, that can speak more to the livestock and equestrian growth aspects.
Yeah.
Really for the space.
Yeah, so I don't know as far as kind of what makes sense. Each agri-hood is different. I guess one of the starting points would be what's the interest. I've heard some interest for equestrian. Showed that last night in the opening presentation a little bit. Serenbe is the somewhat similar project that I had mentioned. They have a great equestrian facility, and so that's kind of inspirational. The large scale livestock is in some ways takes more thought than it's sheep and things like that. and certainly more land. But if we've got 50% of the land in conservation, and there's opportunity. So what's the need? What's the interest around here? What do you think? What would you think it would be a good ag mix?
I'll say on the equestrian side, I'm familiar with Trinity. I've been there. Which is a great for an equestrian, especially when you're younger professional that doesn't have the time to upkeep their own place, or your older individual that doesn't want to. It's great for anybody in the middle. There's a big shortage of places to board horses here in Auburn that are nice and trustworthy. And a place that you would want to spend your time. You just have to think about what discipline you would welcome there, because different equestrian disciplines are going to need different footing in arenas. So if you have a barn, you need at least an arena. If you have an arena, if you're a Western discipline, you need Christian footing if you're jumping. So anyway, just thinking about your disciplines, that's there to use there in a eventing massage facility. But anyway, so those are thoughts to think of. And then your trail usage for equestrian, restricting bikes off of them, bikes on the mix. So just thinking about those aspects, and a lot of really successful agricultural communities, in my opinion, are those that integrate their livestock and equestrian pastures throughout the entire. So people are driving by, seeing cattle grazing. I mean, I even think of more expensive places to live, like in Huntsville, Alabama, or Jones Valley. It's love driving by the cattle pastures that are well maintained. So anyway, but then thinking about your livestock here, your equestrian care, if they're spread out, is a little bit more difficult. There's shelter that you have to buy in, but insofar as equestrian, there is a shortage of high-end places, but then you also have to think about, of course, the labor of who's handling care, because horses, they need daily care and multiple people. And then you have to think about a trainer, like having an in-residence trainer, depending on what discipline you select. Auburn is for sure a dressage and eventing location, and that's usually your higher value client is in the English discipline. But anyway, there's a shortage of that from college students to older individuals. Insofar as an agri-hood, I personally think you're incomplete without cattle, but they're an easy keeper, and if you rotationally graze, then do something both that's aesthetically beautiful and minimal labor if you laid everything out properly to be able to rotationally graze.
Yeah, in my development, we've only got 200 acres. And so as we start to figure out, we have to prioritize, and then we have 50% open space. And so what we're doing in our situation is, because we have so many ag operators around, we're actually becoming a regional food and ag hub. And so like the cattle may be raised elsewhere, but they could be processed and packaged and all that stuff, and using our facilities and those kinds of things. But in this case, even though we're only, the contract for the development entity is just 300 acres, there is more land around it. And so maybe if we kind of think bigger picture outside of the box, maybe we could figure out ways to incorporate some of that stuff as well.
One question would be, so I know you said your development, your farm is self-sustaining. Is that so for every aspect of the agriculture side that you would want to be self-sufficient as far as being profitable on its own?
I mean, it's ideal. Ultimately it depends on, I guess, how much value it would add to the development, for amenity value. Cause like with the, depending on a horse and equine facility or whatever, if they just had like they're doing a new one near us, and they, it's just part of it. When you buy in, you have a stall that's available to you. This is like an amenity in that regard. And so it's part of the whole development pro forma. It probably doesn't have its own business plan. And so that just ultimately just becomes a development/business strategy thing that has to be figured out. But ultimately, if you want the facility, whatever is going to make the most sense and make it viable, that's kind of how we have to figure it out. But it takes a while. So just for what it's worth, too, kind of ask some of your questions like certainty and those kind of things. Like for us, we didn't start the actual we didn't get the farm consultant on board, and designing and all of that stuff until we had the overall master plan done. And so we knew where good soils were for farming and those kind of things. And then we figured out kind of merely what's left over after environmentally sensitive lands where our existing, sort of beautiful tree stands and historic tree rows. What's left over is then where we put development. And then they come in and we say, okay, now let's lay out our farm. Now let's figure out, now we know we have this many acres for this. So now they can actually create a business plan from there. So it's kind of an iterative process as you go.
Yeah, I could completely be wrong, but I think pasture rental for livestock is gonna be one of your easiest things to fill, because that's a lot easier to figure out than, economies of scale for row crops. For
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah.
So that in Lee County, there's shortage of available land. So I think we wouldn't have a hard time finding someone that would contract that. But you may with other aspects.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. And it is simpler to do that as well. And you can kind of just let an operator do their thing with some standards in place, because even an operator needs to know what their expectations are. Even if they know how to do their cattle or do whatever, they still need that. Yes, you're in a neighborhood though. This is different, but the one of the things for me, just knowing with the design perspective, it's like, when you see a market garden and those kind of things, it's just so interesting, like, 'cause even with row crops, they have their own beauty, but it's a lot of sameness, and so trying to figure out, like, how do you and the next step of the ag design process is, so our farm consultant lays it out, and then he gives it to me and to our landscape architects, and we say, okay, I see where you put this. Well, just so you know, if you put high bush blueberries here, you're now blocking these views that we intentionally made these houses go here. And so let's do low bush or do something else. Let's take these things over here. You have all these beautiful, cut flower fields, but they're in the back in the corner. What if we put them right up here at the main intersection so people get the benefit, And so then we kind of take that sort of aesthetic perspective as well. And so, if we did nothing else but row crops and large scale grazing, it would still be awesome. This would be beautiful and have its own amenity. I just hope we can do other things too, that have some real sort of finer grain interest to them. So I think we're on the same.
So at the university that's connected in restaurants.
Yeah.
We grow from 400 to 1,200 pounds of produce a year. But we call that supplemental production, right? The university and its connected restaurants, a lot of produce. So even when we're delivering 500 pounds of lettuce, a week, they're using it within 2 or 3 days. Is there a direction or a vision for what capacity the project would like to grow its own produce? You have the land to grow a lot of produce for on-site consumption. But if you're growing more than what they need, right, there needs to be an outlet. Right. We're blessed that we always have an outlet. Yep. I have an outlet. So is there an idea of what they need, how much quantity you'll want to grow, and how that's shared, and then if there are extra outlets? There's nothing worse than executing on growing something amazing.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And not at this point, we don't know. Ultimately based on what I was just saying about, kind of the design process of it, then sort of back into it. Cause like, just interestingly, just like we don't have a number of units of housing that we're intending on, we don't have an agricultural production intention as well. It's like the land will dictate ultimately what we can do. We go like, oh, to your point, like, well, actually, we probably shouldn't do that much, tomatoes or whatever, because they're just going to go to waste. So let's make that available for grazing, or. And so it ends up being kind of a give and take situation. But and being in the Nashville area, we're lucky got a big city there, and we've got tons of restaurants, and so as soon as we started talking about doing an agri-hood, we had people going like, okay, we have a whole distribution system. They want to like, can we be a distribution hub? We don't have one in this part of the county. Can we do all it is, or super, blessed in that regard. So, here we have to figure out kind of like what's going on already, what the needs are, and how can we plug into that. So then, the next time somebody has an ag community meeting like this, it's like, okay, well, here's of course Fielden, they're at the table, they're part of the community at large. So I think, your knowledge is going to be pretty helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing on my project. I mean, it's a great brand. We're got a cool logo and everything, and it's a good way to sort of help the farm, rather than it's just like random carrots show up. It's like, no, these are building carrots. Oh, that's that place over there. I love that place. I think my kids there. We roam the trails, whatever.
Share more about work and to implement native plants, both in the common green spaces, but also on.
Yeah, we haven't talked about it that much internally here, like yet. Um, the it's been so much I'm trying to answer all these questions about regulation, not these questions, but us finding answers to these questions up to this point. But the what I like to do is acquire plant materials, right? And limits how much we need for irrigation, all that. But we're talking about having green water capture and gray water recycle for irrigation. So that's not that big of a deal. And then pesticides, herbicides, all of those things, we need to preclude them. And what we're doing my project is we are only having like lawn in like parks, like normal parks, like that. So you can't have it on your private property. Some places aren't willing to go that far. Maybe you allow it in the back, courtyard or whatever, but not just on native materials. But again, having to be thoughtful about it so that you won't get stuff that's native or are these weeds, like which is it? So that's my preference. I've talked to people about it yet. What do you think?
Be awesome. That implemented from the infancy of the plan and also regulated and maintained, not just a suggestion. For invasive species or other things to pop up and realize that we're already battling a lot of things on our own yard that are hurting the turkeys, wild turkeys, other animals and wildlife. And it's really hard once it starts, like hard to stop when it gets so.
Well, and I think too, part of the education of the owners, it's not just necessarily about why this place is lovely and the intent of it, but can also be technical. Like, oh, if you got to watch out for these 3 plants. They want to get in here and they're invasive. If you see them in the lot, get rid of them. And then also educating horticulture crew. I mean, like that's got to have that. And but also to recognizing like we do our best. But when you got a piece of property that's big, it's like if you see something on the trail, it's like, oh no, not doing what they said, so we gotta keep it reasonable. But I like to crowdsource that. Have people put a sign up so that you see this or whatever, pull it up, please. Yeah, and go up there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think I talked to Paul across the table the other day, very highest qualified grass guys, say, I think that would be really great to see a lot of these, especially in front yards. I know people here love to hang out in the backyard. a lot of little kids out there, I just did my backyard. People don't go away.
Yeah.
My whole front is trees, and now I got back hats and grass. Play without there, worry about a snake. But I would love to see that stream view side of things. Like, you know, have it the way it should be, or maybe bring in some of the grass to the ball. Maybe give them an option not to paint all of it. Be your back from the pizza road, give an option to have a yard. I think that's a good in middle ground. So you want to try working on your own or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing too is, so often in most neighborhoods, they don't have proper parks, all that stuff. And so like for me, the house that I was talking about with the edible landscaping, we lived right on park, and the park was built around the old farm pond, and there was, grassy areas, there was the farm pond, there's the creek that went right along it, the old sort of tree row was there. And so I was more than happy my kids to go right out there, play, and I wasn't having, I don't even own a lawnmower, and so our private space was, it's either impervious pavers or planted in like ferns, things like that. Enough room for, grill and seating area, that kind of stuff. So you can go out there and experience it. But the kids weren't like, we're going in the courtyard to play, it's like, we're going to be in Russell Park. But, maybe not every house is on a park or whatever. So it's figure that out. We go see what we can do. All right. So as usual, we're over time, but only by 4 minutes this time instead of 30 minutes. So any final thoughts? And by the way, for those who weren't here at the opening, we're going to be here like every day, even when we don't have these meetings. And so if you have a thought, just drop in if you get the schedule somewhere, because usually we're here, but tonight and tomorrow night we actually have to get out of here at 3 because apparently it's a business, it's a wine bar, and so they want to make some money, and that's okay. But the rest of the time we're here, and morning, noon, night. We usually, well, we used to say, people start taking us up on it so much. If you see the lights on, come on in, but then we're like heads down working, and somebody's going, can you tell me everything about it? So feel free to come in, but we'll be here. If you have new ideas, pop up. Our next meeting is due. That's for neighborhood, community character, and housing. So want to talk about that? Feel free to come